2017. This webinar is for siblings and about siblings. So if you are a sibling attending the webinar, please feel free to submit questions. I'm going to go to the pre-submitted questions before I take live questions, but you can send those in at any time to my moderator, and Andrea will pass them on to me. In addition, I want you to know that it's our goal to have these once a month to support siblings, so you can always send in questions, and then you can share these with your other children. Doesn't matter what their age is, but you can send that to them. So with that preamble, I'll get right into it. And I'll qualify, this is the first time on this format with Click Meeting, the webinar version. We're also doing the podcast, of course. So we might have a couple of little bugs to work out. We tried to practice it to be ready and in time. So let me get to the first pre-submitted question. With our son away in treatment, his brother at home is not interested in talking about him or getting updates on how he is doing. Any advice on how to support him or get him to open up? One important thing about trauma, one thing that we know about trauma is that a very common feature, almost in all cases, is that something happened to you outside of your control. I mean, that makes sense, right? And so when something happens to you outside of your control, it's important as the treater, as the support person for that person, to not take control out of their hands again. So it can almost be re-traumatizing. That's why, as a therapist, when you're dealing with trauma, and we're dealing with it all the time, you're trying to be gentle. You're trying to respect and honor the defense, because the defense has been put there to protect them. So I would say, and this is a very common question, do your best to hold and honor your son's anger. Give it proper space. Validate it. That protection, that wall that he's put up, is to protect him from a feeling of powerlessness and whatever other hurt or pain or injury he acquired with his siblings. So I would do more of that. And I would even name it, if I could, saying it makes sense. And you know, I love when a parent can go back to the child and even say, I was talking to a therapist, or I was watching a webinar, and I realized that I was imposing something on you that you didn't want or need. Now, the danger, the difficulty is that parents, we have this X-ray vision, right? We can often see into our child, see past or beneath or through the defense. But it's important that we don't use that or express it. It's very invasive to just walk past somebody's defense, right? It's very penetrating, and the only thing that they're left with is the impulse to build a higher, thicker wall around them when somebody goes right past it. So take them at face value to some respect. Know what you know and act based on that. If it gets critical, if he gets at high risk or starts acting out, you can maybe make more requirements about coming to family therapy or coming to therapy. But it's not going to work just to send him to it. You can tell them that the option's open, honor it. One of my favorite techniques, and I don't teach a lot of techniques because I think it's the principles beneath the techniques. It's the why that is the real thing, the thing that does the healing and the work. But there is a technique that I like, and I believe that there's truth to it, and that is invite people into therapy in your family to help and support you, right? And with the younger the child is, the more you can kind of enforce that. But to say, I want you to come to therapy because I need help working through this. And literally, if you brought a child to therapy, I would focus on you. And I would do my best as a therapist to empower your child and validate your child. And that can be very helpful for them to have that experience with and around their parent. So honor the defense. Don't be invasive. If it gets serious, you can take more drastic measures. And a good idea, a helpful idea, something that really does work in my experience, is invite them to come to therapy to support you. You don't say you need therapy, you need to talk about this. Because there's a truth to the idea that you need them to talk about it. They're saying they don't need it. And if we just look through that, if we just see over that and just tell them what we think or what we know, we're not respecting the boundary of the defense that was put there for very good reason. What can I do best to support my sister while she is at Evoke? Again, one of the most common questions I get is this question about how can they support. Watching a webinar is support. Learning some of their language and tools can be helpful. Watch one or two of the webinars that your parents might think are helpful, reading a book that they're reading. So learning about what they're going through, not just the literal experience about being out in the wilderness, but actually what they're learning psychologically. That's the best thing that you can do. In addition to that, I would say it's also important to not know things. It's important to embrace not knowing. I tell this story a lot where an older sister who was successful was going to visit her still young adult, but younger sibling in a program. She called me and was very nervous that she hadn't been involved in a lot of therapy that we had done over the phone. And she was nervous that she was going to say something or trigger something in her brother that was going to set him back. And what I invited her to do was show up and tell him that. It would actually be really nice for him if he didn't think that he was the only one in the family that was a project. That he also needed help and might mess up, might make a mistake. So show up vulnerable. And one really cool thing that happens for children, no matter what age, that come through our program, young adult and adolescent children, is that they do develop some skills, some insights that the rest of the family doesn't have because they haven't been in it as much. They haven't been immersed in it. And so there is a sense of pride and esteem that can come from all the work that they've done. I remember I had one adolescent boy who was talking to his older brother on the phone who he thought was perfect. And at one point he asked his brother, my client, my student, asked his brother on the phone, he said, "How did you feel when I was abusing mom emotionally, when I was being cruel to her? How was that for you?" And his brother started describing some thoughts that he had. And he said, no, how did you feel? And his brother again started to explain some thoughts that he had. And for a third time, his brother said, I'm trying to ask you how you felt. And the brother on the phone, the successful one, put that in quotes, said, I don't know what you're talking about. So, and there was a moment with my student where I sat with him afterwards and I said, wasn't that amazing? Like, you look up to your brother and you admire him, and everybody says that he's the successful, the good one in the family. But do you see how much you're learning just about how to feel and how to talk about feelings, and he doesn't even know that? So there's a sense of healthy pride, healthy esteem that comes from the tools, the skills, and the insights that they have here. And so for you to show up imperfect and not knowing is a real gift to them. I see my parents doing a lot of work and investing a lot of time and money, and my brother stay there. What happens if he comes home and nothing changes? Well, people can definitely regress and relapse. That happens, absolutely. But it won't be the same in some ways, in the way that he's changed. And sometimes those insights and those tools go dormant, but you can't go through this program and not get something out of it. And what that can do for the family is you can know that he knows, right? You can know that he knows how to behave, how to do well, how to be respectful, how to be loving, how to be kind, how not to self-medicate. He's just done it. But I say this to families all the time. I encourage families, and this would apply to siblings too, and to parents. The mindset that I suggest is everybody in the family assume that nobody else in the family is going to change. And so then what are you going to do about it? In other words, focus on what you can control. And even for a sibling, that means maybe going to therapy, getting some tools, talking to somebody about this, getting some help, doing some of the reading that your parents and your brother or sister are doing, so that you have some background, some skills, and ask for some recommendations for a book or two. We give adolescents and young adults books that are interesting and also helpful. So do what you can. So when and if he or she does come back and they do relapse or regress, you have some more tools to deal with it. You can take care of yourself a little bit better. So many come home. Our research tells us that we have great outcomes. Obviously, people do relapse and regress. The best mindset that I've thought of is, what if nobody else changes? Then what am I going to do, and how am I going to deal with it? And then get some tools under your belt. Those are some of the thoughts I have. With the weather changing, how do you keep the students safe and warm? This was a question that was written to me a few months ago, and of course the weather has changed. We're right in the middle of winter. We have the highest quality gear, right? They have really warm gear, really warm sleeping bags. They also every night are around a fire. They go from the fire to bed. and they have sleeping bags that are rated far below what they need to be rated to stay warm. So we keep them warm and dry, and we're always checking their hands, their feet. We touch their hands and feet 2 times a day during hand check and foot check, making sure that there's good circulation, that everything looks good. We're monitoring their water, because being hydrated is really important in the winter, and it's hard because we don't want to drink water when we're cold, but it's actually in the long run something that helps our body to stay warm. And so we're always monitoring all of those things, and then we provide them gear. We don't let them get into trouble with weather, and it becomes the work. I've told this story before, that my staff have asked me the question. They've said, with the short days in the winter and all the work that we have to do to keep the clients, the students warm and dry, how do we get therapy? How do we squeeze that in? And my response is, that is the therapy. It's learning how to take care of yourself, being responsible, working as a team, listening to the staff who have more experience. And so it all becomes a metaphor for how you take care of yourself and how you work with other people. So camping is obviously for many people a spiritual experience, but it's also challenges you. Nothing can be taken for granted. It's so easy at home to take things for granted, like the weather. We all have houses that we live in, and we can just be inside when it's cold. But when you're outside and it's raining for 6 hours, 8 hours straight, you learn something that you can't learn any other way. So it's a challenge, but it's something they also feel very good about in the end. I am 16 years old. My brother, 14 years old, is currently at Evoke, and his therapist said I could come visit when my parents do. I was wondering what kinds of things I will do with my brother when I'm there. Is there a sample schedule? I didn't post a sample schedule because it varies. The therapist will design it for your family, but this is what you'll typically experience when you come out. You'll experience some time with the group, doing group activities or even participating in a group. You'll probably have an introduction group where you'll talk about your brother and your experience of him before and maybe even during Evoke. And you'll be asked questions, and people will tell you about their experience with your brother. Same with your parents. Then there'll be some time alone. And that might be, in this case, you might be alone in family therapy or with your brother in family therapy, and there might be some times where it's just your parents and your brother. So the therapist will make that decision throughout the day based on what's best. You'll have dinner time, you'll have some games, you'll have some ceremonies, I'm sure, that they use to welcome you and to say goodbye to you. And then you'll have some therapy. You'll learn some skills. I think it would be best for every sibling 14 years of age and older, if they're coming out to the field. And that's a wonderful privilege to watch the webinar about field visits. And I realize that these webinars might not be all that interesting for young people, and sometimes not even for adults, but they can be helpful and can prepare you for what it's going to be like out there, and some of the skills and the tools that you're going to be using, that your brother's going to be using. So how do you determine where the kids go after their time in the program? For example, do you typically recommend group homes? Most of our students go to a therapeutic program or school after Evoke. And that's because our experience tells us that while wilderness therapy and Evoke are incredibly powerful experiences and starting points for therapy, a springboard for therapy, that there needs to be some practice with those skills in a more school-like setting. And so there's more contact with family. Eventually there's home visits. So that's typically what happens. It doesn't always happen. Somewhere around, give or take, depending upon the season, 70% of the time they go on to a therapeutic school or program afterwards. So, and I've always said it's not something that I learned in school. It's something that I learned by experience and working with young people in the program. Who founded Evoke? Why was it created? Well, myself and 4 others founded Evoke, and it was created because we believed that we could do a program that had more compassion, more mindfulness, had a whole health focus, had a tremendous amount of family support and education. We believed that we could do that well. It's really our passion, and we believe that the wilderness setting is a fantastic place to do therapy in. We think it encourages mindfulness. That's learning what you feel and what you think, learning to be present, learning to feel difficult feelings. We think it encourages a sense of spirituality, recognizing kind of where you fit in the big picture, in the whole, and in the community. And we think that children clients, they show up in wilderness therapy in a way that we see all of their issues. So we also added a lot of research. We do a lot of research at Evoke. So that's what we wanted to do differently, was family, unparalleled family support, mindfulness on whole health. We also believe in organizational health at Evoke. And so what that looks like is that we encourage all of our employees to be healthy, mind, body, and spirit. Even with my co-founding partners, we encourage everybody to go to therapy. We encourage everybody to take their ego or pride out of it and to just show up authentic and real and honest, to listen to and give honest, loving feedback to each other. So those are some of the core principles. There's actually a page on Evoke about Evoke's philosophy that you can take a look at, and a blog if you want to learn more. What's a typical day like for my brother? He is 16. A typical day is they wake up in the morning, there's breakfast chores, cooking, they eat breakfast. Groups can happen anytime. So they might have anywhere from a few to 10 groups a day, where it just spontaneously somebody calls a group. That's what we say. They call a group, and then everybody circles up and they talk about what's on their mind, or maybe a problem they're having with somebody else in the group. So they do that. We hike. We try to hike 4 or 5 days out of the week. 2 days out of the week we don't hike. Those are the therapist days, and we call those layovers, where they're doing therapy sessions and projects and reading. They're also doing laundry and getting food and changing all of that out, getting their packs reset for the week. We're hiking during the day. We have lunch. They have personal time every day to work on they have therapy and academic curriculum that they work on every day. We have time to make fires by rubbing sticks together. That's something we practice almost every day. We call it busting. We get to camp at night. We set up camp. Then we cook dinner. And then we have an evening group. And that's the most formal group of the evening. We call it a sticks group. And a sticks group is where everybody circles up and somebody breaks a stick and uses a ritual to start and end group using a stick based on some Native American traditions with the talking stick. And those groups can be about letters from home, issues that they're working on, an assignment, some group issues. And then sometimes we have songs and stories, games at night, and then bedtime, and then we do it all over again. The students' clients say that days go by like weeks and weeks go by like days. And that's so true. You look back on a week and it seems like it was yesterday. And at the same time, there's so much in a day, and you're exhausted by the time that it's time for bed. And you look at something you did this morning and that seemed like it happened several days ago. What are some of the things my brother might take away from his experience? Ideally, he walks away with a better ability to feel his feelings, a better ability to express those feelings, not using the symptoms, the behaviors that he was using before. We think, basically, as therapists, we think that the stuff that we do that gets us into trouble is just our feelings coming out sideways. It's our unexpressed emotions and pain and wounds. So if we can teach people how to feel, we can teach them to talk about it, we can teach the family to listen to it better, then our belief is that people can heal and get better. They have to do it where there's patience, curiosity, love, and non-judgment. It doesn't work well in the long run to use shame, guilt, intimidation, and anger. And those are the feelings we often have as parents or as family members when somebody's acting out, especially if it's directed towards us. And so we have to do a lot of work to be able to heal ourselves and to respond in those other ways. But he'll learn how to feel. He'll learn to have done something hard. He'll have some specific tools for self-care, self-calming, self-soothing. And hopefully he'll also have some tools to communicate and connect with his family better on this process, and they'll have some too. How can I be there for my brother when he is done at Evoke if he's going straight to aftercare? I think letters are important. I think, like I said earlier, learning along with him as much as you can, being supportive and showing him empathy while he's there. Don't try to talk him out of his feelings. I think it's important that you support your parents in this process too, that you don't undermine or kind of talk negatively about your parents to your brother. If you have something to say to your parents, tell them, and if they're not doing a good job of listening, get into family therapy where a therapist will make them listen. But I don't think it'd be helpful to say that to your brother. Express love and hope for him. Like I said, do some of the work. You're not going to do as much work, but if you can do some of the work and join him just a little bit, that's a powerful gift and support to him. Thanks for the questions. All right, I'm happy to take any questions. Um, and we have to do it this way now. This is the way that we do it now, is they come out here at the bottom. The first question, which book can you recommend for siblings 10 and 6 years old to support their sister in treatment? I think a cool book would be The Knight in Rusty Armor. And I think I would read that as a family. And I think it's a wonderful story about going onto a journey to take off your armor, which is your defenses, all the things that they symbolize, all the things, and kind of the steps that the knight has to go on. I think that's probably the best book for younger people, and then discuss it as a family. There's a follow-up book that I love, and there's a webinar about both The Knight in Rusty Armor and the follow-up book called The Letters of Juliet to the Knight in Rusty Armor, where the wife of the knight has her own journey too. So I think that one's a little bit more for adults, but I think The Knight in Rusty Armor. The Journey of Socrates is also a great book for young people. The Alchemist is another great book for young people. Illusions might be more for teenagers, but that's another good one, written by the same author who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So those are the ones that come to mind first for younger people. Knight in Rusty Armor, Letters of Juliet to the Knight in Rusty Armor, The Alchemist, The Journey of Socrates. Those are the ones that jump out to me, probably in that order. Next question. Our daughter completed our young adult program about 3 months ago and is now in aftercare. Our 21-year-old son is away at college and is beginning to voice his anger associated with the trauma caused by years of our daughter's difficult behaviors. How do we support his healing when he isn't living with us and available for as much conversation? I think just most importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough, let him feel it, honor it, validate it. Do not try to get him to get over it. The way to help people get stuck in their feelings is to try to get them not to feel it. That's the best thing you can do to help somebody stay stuck in their feelings. So do your best just to even thank him for talking about it as little as he does, and say it's normal and you're glad that he's getting it out there. That's the best thing that I would say to do. And you can invite him to do all the same things that I've been discussing on the broadcast tonight, which is come to family therapy, offer someone for him to talk to if he wants. I would ask you to watch the webinar on containing. It's about containing is a therapeutic word for listening. So watch the webinar on containing and be there for him as much as you can. And the healing can happen even if they're not together. And eventually encourage him to write a letter to his brother, and his brother hopefully will have the skills, the tools, and the willingness to listen to it and to validate it himself. So those are my thoughts. What kind of research do you do at Evoke? You can go to our research page, but we do 2-year follow-up studies. So we do studies, and the minute that one 2-year follow-up study ends, then we start a brand new one. And so there are many, many measures that we've used. The next one we're going to do that's going to start in a little while is going to be focusing on resilience. But we just got published again in a peer-reviewed journal. We presented several times at conferences, psychological conferences, including the APA conference. So it's something that we're committed to and that we're passionate about. We also participate in the nationwide National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Programs. So if you go to our webpage and look at our research page, you'll see all of our publications. You can also go to OBHIC, OBHIC, and that's a cooperative organization that we work with along with NATSAP to help give data and support research for wilderness therapy. So we've done a lot of different measures, a lot of different studies. Any other questions, Andrea? What makes for a helpful, effective letter from a sibling? Genuineness, being honest, vulnerable, expressing love, concern, and hope. That's what I would say. So be as honest as you can, as genuine as you can. Express your love first, and then express your concern or your hope. And if there are hurt feelings about what has happened, or anger, express those also. Right? That's okay. You can love somebody. I mean, one of the things we talk about all the time is that you can love somebody and still be angry with them. And so it's important to embrace all of those. So I would say just pretty simple. Ask your Evoke therapist what they're looking for. Many clients and students get a sort of an impact letter from their siblings. It's not as formal or as long as the parents' impact letter, but it's similar. And sometimes that's the thing that reaches the participant in the program the most, is the impact letter. So thanks for asking. All right, I'm going to go through some upcoming events and slides, and then if there are any questions before I close, I'll take those. So we have the intensives and workshops. The February one is full. The March Finding You, the Finding You workshops are ones that I run where we go into deeper work. And then the workshops are ones we want for current families. If you're able to go to these, we want all current families to be able to go to these. We just finished one, and so the next one isn't until March. And that you do work there, you do experiential education, large groups of families. The Finding You is 6 or 7 people in a cabin doing deep personal work. If you want therapy accelerator or to go a little deeper, then that's the one for you. Oh, I somehow got back to the beginning. I'm learning this new format, sorry. Follow us on social media. We also have a podcast where we're putting all the old webinars on podcasts, and also all the new webinars are going on podcast automatically. If you have an Android device, you can use the SoundCloud app. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. And if you go to the Second Nature Alumni Foundation page on Facebook, you can learn more about helping people who can't afford therapy. Parent support groups tomorrow night in Salt Lake City. We still have space for that one. 6:30 to 8:30. There's the address. You can email Andrea at evoketherapy.com for more information. I'll be in Chicago next Wednesday night, the 15th, 6:30 to 8:30. And then New York City, I'll be back in New York at the end of the month, 6:30 to 8:30 at the university there. We have adventure trips for families and young adults who want to have good, sober fun, mountain biking, fly fishing, hiking, camping, canyoneering, rappelling, anything you can sign up for. You want, we can do that. And it's kind of therapy light, more about fun than therapy, although there's definitely can be some learning and growth there. My book, The Journey of the Heroic Parent, is available on Amazon in paperback or audio. You can also go to the Parent Alumni Foundation book page. And if you buy a book from there on the Amazon page, there, then a percentage of the money goes to help people who can't afford therapy. All right. Any last questions? Yes. My teenage daughter is at Evoke. What webinars would be helpful for her older college-age brothers to watch, should they choose to? I'm going to go back to, let's see if any of these come out. I think the I Feel statement is kind of the basic skill webinar that we have. They can also, remember, you can also watch they might be more willing to listen to a podcast or something like that. I think that one jumps out. I personally think that Healthy Emotional Boundaries is a wonderful webinar for anybody who wants to learn more about boundaries. Maybe not for young adults. That wouldn't be clear. 8 Tools for Transforming Relationships is probably my favorite general one for families. And for me, I've presented on it several times, and each time I present on it, it reinforces the basic things that I've seen over 25 years of doing therapy that help families the most. So those are the ones that stand out to me. Let me see if there are any others. I think those are the ones that jump out to me. So I would say I Feel statement, 8 Tools, and then Being Right is kind of cool for families. The trap of being right is kind of cool, because I think a lot of us in families, we we don't encourage development of the self enough, and we focus too much on being right or who's wrong. And that's definitely a trap for a lot of families. All right, folks. Thanks. Looks like the new format, the new webinar format worked. Also, if you're listening to this on podcast, should be just about the same. The next webinar, I'll let you know the topic here in the next couple of days. It's going to be Monday, February 13th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to share this link with a sibling who might not have been able to attend if you thought some part of it spoke to them. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.